Imagine this. More than 3,000 years ago, the world was thriving. Egypt stood tall along the Nile, its pharaohs ruling over vast temples and fertile lands. In Anatolia, the Hittite Empire commanded armies and diplomacy that stretched across the Near East. In Greece, the Mycenaean kings built palaces of stone and sent ships across the Aegean Sea. Farther east, Babylon and Assyria were centers of learning, wealth, and power. This was the Late Bronze Age, a time of glittering cities, international trade, and cultural exchange. Copper from Cyprus, tin from Central Asia, luxury goods from Crete and Egypt, all moving through busy trade routes. Kings sent letters sealed in clay tablets, written in Akkadian, the diplomatic language of the day. It was, in many ways, the world's first international system. But around 1200 BC, something happened. The Hittite Empire vanished. The Mycenaean palaces crumbled into ruins. Cities in the Levant burned to the ground. Trade routes collapsed. For centuries afterward, Greece and much of the eastern Mediterranean entered a dark age. It was as if the world itself reset. Historians call it the Bronze Age collapse, an event so sudden and catastrophic, it remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Chapter 1. The World Before the Fall. The Late Bronze Age was unique because it was interconnected. Empires didn't just fight, they traded, negotiated, and depended on each other. Egypt's pharaohs imported wood from Lebanon. The Hittites demanded tin and copper for bronze weapons. The Mycenaeans exported olive oil and luxury pottery. Every kingdom played a role in the ancient economy. We know this from the Amarna letters, discovered in Egypt. These clay tablets reveal kings calling each other brother, exchanging gifts, and even marrying their daughters into foreign courts to strengthen alliances. But this interdependence made the system fragile. A bad harvest in Anatolia could ripple across the Aegean. A war in one region could disrupt trade everywhere. By the 13th century BC, cracks appeared. The Hittites faced rebellions in their outer provinces. Egypt fought costly wars against Libyans and other rivals. In Greece, evidence of fortifications suggests rulers felt under threat. It was a globalized world, but also a fragile one. And when disaster struck, everything unraveled. Chapter 2. The Sea Peoples. Then came the mysterious Sea Peoples. We know them mainly from Egyptian records, especially the inscriptions of Pharaoh Rameses III. Carved into the walls of Medinet Habu, they depict strange warriors arriving on ships, men with horned helmets, round shields, and new kinds of swords. The Egyptians wrote that these invaders swept across the Mediterranean, destroying kingdoms one by one. They burned cities in Anatolia. They toppled the Hittite Empire. They reached the Levant, reducing once great cities to ashes. Even mighty Egypt itself was attacked. Ramesses claimed victory, boasting that Egypt was spared, but in truth, Egypt never fully recovered. The empire shrank, its economy weakened, and it entered a slow decline. Who were the Sea Peoples? Historians still debate. Were they refugees fleeing drought and famine, mercenaries turned raiders, or displaced populations from the Aegean and beyond? Whoever they were, they unleashed chaos that reshaped the ancient world. Chapter 3. Other Causes of Collapse. The Sea Peoples were only part of the story. Modern research suggests the collapse wasn't just about invasion, but a perfect storm of disasters. Climate change struck first. Studies of pollen and tree rings show evidence of severe droughts around 1200 BC. Crops failed, famine spread, and people migrated in desperation. Then came earthquakes. The eastern Mediterranean lies on fault lines, and many cities show signs of sudden destruction not caused by war. Imagine buildings crumbling overnight, adding panic to already starving populations. Trade also broke down. Bronze required copper and tin, often mined thousands of kilometers apart. When trade routes collapsed, armies could no longer make weapons. At the same time, new iron technology emerged, cheaper and more accessible, shifting the balance of power. Finally, governments themselves failed. Complex palace systems depended on scribes, taxes, and centralized authority. Once food and trade collapsed, so did political order. In short, famine, invasion, earthquakes, and technological change all combined into a chain reaction. The system collapsed, like dominoes falling one by one. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. By 1100 BC, the world was transformed. The Hittite Empire, gone, leaving only scattered ruins in Anatolia. The Mycenaean palaces of Greece, burned, abandoned, and forgotten. Greece fell into centuries of illiteracy, what historians call the Greek Dark Ages. The Egyptian Empire, though surviving, was permanently weakened, never again reaching the heights of its earlier power. From this collapse, new powers eventually rose. In the Levant, small kingdoms like Israel and Phoenicia emerged. In Greece, centuries later, the classical age of Athens and Sparta would begin, and in the long run, Rome would rise to dominate the Mediterranean. The Bronze Age had ended. The world had been broken but reborn. The Bronze Age collapse is one of the greatest mysteries of history. How could so many powerful empires, rulers of wealth, knowledge, and armies fall almost at once? Was it the sea peoples, climate change, earthquakes, or something we still don't understand? What we do know is this: civilizations are fragile. The Bronze Age reminds us that even the strongest empires can vanish in the blink of an eye. So perhaps the real question is not why they fell, but whether one day our world could collapse just as suddenly. Chapter 5: Lessons from the Collapse. The Bronze Age collapse was not just a story of destruction, it was also a story of survival and adaptation. When the great empires fell, smaller communities stepped into the vacuum. Villages that once depended on palace systems learned to become self-sufficient. Farmers relied less on imported bronze and began using local iron tools. Traders no longer sailed vast distances, but focused on regional networks that were easier to maintain. This shift changed the very structure of ancient societies. Power became more decentralized. Instead of giant kingdoms, smaller city-states and local rulers gained influence. In the Levant, for example, the Phoenicians emerged, master sailors who built new trade routes across the Mediterranean. Their alphabet would one day inspire Greek and Latin, shaping the languages we speak today. The Israelites, too, appeared during this time, establishing small kingdoms that would later play a central role in biblical history. Meanwhile, in Greece, despite centuries of hardship, the seeds of classical civilization were planted. Out of the ashes of collapse came the foundations of democracy, philosophy, and Western culture. But there is a warning here as well. The interconnected system of the Bronze Age looked strong, but it was brittle. When one piece fell, the rest followed. Modern scholars compare it to globalization today. Just as ancient kingdoms depended on tin, copper, and food from afar, our world depends on oil, technology, and international trade. A disruption in one region can still ripple across the globe. So the lesson of the Bronze Age collapse is timeless. Civilizations are never invincible. They survive only as long as they adapt to change. 3,000 years ago, empires rose and fell. Their ruins still stand, silent witnesses to a world that once seemed eternal. The Bronze Age collapse reminds us that history does not move in a straight line. Progress can vanish, stability can shatter, and entire civilizations can be lost to fire, famine, and time. Yet from every collapse comes rebirth. From ruins rise new ideas, new cultures, and new powers. The end of the Bronze Age gave birth to the world that would eventually create Athens, Rome, and the foundations of modern civilization. So as we look back on that forgotten age, the question is not just why did they fall, it is also what will we build when our own age ends? Because history has shown us, every golden age carries within it the seeds of its own collapse.